Hello there and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. Today we're going to talk about wokeness and in particular, why is it that Boise State University seems determined to ride wokeness into the ground? Look, it's a trend right now that more and more Americans are finally realizing we don't have to play along with these little struggle sessions in every area of our lives. But Boise State, well, I'll show you some reasons why they may want to reconsider their last stand. Details are coming up.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Once again, I welcome you to Nowhere to Hide. You know, it's so interesting to see how hard the left has fought for various issues. And when people, I was going to say the right, but when normal people, when just average people who just don't want to be forced into something like boys pretending to be girls allowed into girls' locker rooms and restrooms, when people push back, when policies enacted to push back against this agenda, suddenly that's considered, well, you politicized things. Former Attorney General Jim Jones is a big one for this. He's like, oh, all these cultural war issues. Why, that's just, that's people just out there starting trouble for no reason at all. That's not the case at all. It's kind of like a robber coming up to you and pointing a gun at you and saying, give me your money. And you say, no. And they say, why'd you have to get all political? It's that same kind of dynamic. So I want to show you a very concrete example of how Boise State is still heavily invested, okay, maybe to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars, but there's a particular news source that they are utilizing that is just questionable, to put it mildly. It's called The Conversation. And I love this slide here. Academic rigor, journalistic flair, no, truth in advertising is Trump derangement syndrome. And the Idaho Freedom Foundation points out that BSU continues to shovel funds into far left projects that nobody asked for. And this time it's in the form of an anti-Trump media outlet. Now, I want to make something really clear here. This is not to stump for Donald Trump. You are free to either like him or not like him or be indifferent, whatever the case may be. But when someone claiming the moniker of, academic rigor and journalistic flair is just clearly out there spouting leftist platitudes, maybe it needs to be called out. So here's how BSU's funding of The Conversation undermines efforts to tackle illegal immigration, medical freedom, and traditional family values, things which actually matter to people here in Idaho. Let's delve into this a little bit. I also have some answers at the end about how we can answer this without, bringing more contention and anger to the situation. It starts with the word no. The Conversation claims academic rigor and nonpartisan journalism, but instead it delivers anti-Trump hit pieces. Now, a College Fix study found 60% of its Trump coverage from January to February 2025 was negative. How do we know this? Well, they used a lot of terms like dictator and fascist. I think you're hearing that a lot today as President Trump has made some pretty serious moves to clean up some of the more crime-ridden areas, particularly in Washington, D.C. And people are protesting. What? We like our crime and Black Lives Matter. And it's like, what are you trying to say here? You sound a little racist when you put it that way. Anyway, one of the more insane articles that we came across on their site is they take exception that Trump is not affirming the gender delusions of transgender people. In fact, they label that as a fascist move. The attack on transgender rights is intended to appeal to Americans with authoritarian inclinations. Do what we say, or we'll accuse you of exactly what we're doing. Okay, well, it's hard to argue with that, right? I think it's meant to be. Well, this is deeply insulting to Idahoans who demanded action on this issue. Now, thanks to our legislature, we live in a state where transgender surgeries are banned for minors. Thank you, Chloe Cole, for coming and speaking to our legislators and helping persuade them that the time is now. And biological males are prohibited from competing in women's sports. This is common sense, and I mean that in that normal people would not find that the least bit controversial or somehow infuriating, but not so for Boise State and for The Conversation, apparently. In another article, ICE is compared to the Gestapo. I believe that comparing ICE to the Gestapo is a reflection of modern anxiety, a fear that the U.S. is veering toward authoritarianism reminiscent of 1930s Germany. Now, that is a legitimate concern. Anytime you see government power being expanded or being misused, that is definitely a possibility. Something that they don't seem to mention, though, is the danger of authoritarianism in the form of Stalinism or Marxism. And that, for some reason, seems to get a pass as what? That's just, what? It's just another way of looking at the world. It's kind of like calling political correctness manners. Manners don't require coercion. I mean, there is social pressure, but it's also a matter of, hey, I'd like to be respectable and treat people as I would want to be treated, as opposed to political correctness, which is come have a struggle session until you have changed your mind and are chanting in unison with the mob. Apparently, wanting common sense immigration policies now makes you a Nazi. Well, that's a slap in the face to every Idahoan who cares about public safety and our nation's sovereignty. And the 2024 election in Idaho, and I would add elsewhere, was in many ways a referendum on stopping the illegal invasion. Do you remember Secretary of Homeland Defense Mayorkas talking, or excuse me, Homeland Security, Mayorkas, who talked about, oh, we can't close the border, and President Biden, we just can't do that. Well, it's impossible. There's no way we could build a wall. There's no way that we could slow down, the flow across that southern border. Well, we've seen that it went from thousands and thousands of contacts to how many now? You can count them on one hand and still have fingers left over. It was a matter of will, and they did not have the political will to do it. But anybody who does, well, of course, only a Nazi would be concerned about that. Then it comes to health freedom, which it turns out is one of the biggest issues in Idaho. And it's still not an issue that is fully resolved, in the sense that Governor Little still seems unapologetic for the lockdowns he imposed and for the arrests that were carried out on people who would not bend the knee to policy that should never have been enacted in the first place. That's a story for another time. But in one essay, the author claims that Trump and Department of Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. are destroying science. Any research project that mentions diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, climate change, or addresses the cause of vaccine hesitancy is a prime target. They're very concerned that there's not enough politics in our science, or their politics. But health freedom, no, that is a big deal. And frankly, Idaho just became a beacon of medical freedom and inquiry by banning mask and vaccine mandates, prohibiting DEI in higher education. RFK Jr. even called Idaho the home of medical freedom during a recent visit. We should take that as a compliment. That doesn't mean that everybody rejects out of hand every vaccination. It just means people understand you cannot coerce people to undertake any kind of medical intervention against their will. But for some reason, again, saying, no, well, why'd you get all political about it? Well, because our personal sovereignty matters. But never mind all that. According to the essay, if you care about keeping Idaho healthy, if you care about making your own decisions, you are, you guessed it, a Nazi. The history of authoritarian regimes tells us when ideologues take over science, it does not end well. It was the Nazi takeover, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing about this is probably the most remarkable thing. They don't see how they are projecting exactly what they are doing onto other people, accusing others of doing precisely what they're doing. I'm not sure why that is. But this is just a sample of what Boise State University chose to invest $40,000 of university funds in. This conversation website with money diverted from classrooms and campus safety, all to promote a biased website full of unhinged takes. Is that what you expect of higher education or want from institutions of higher education in Idaho? Probably not. But then again, it has a lot to do with how many on the left see things right now. In fact, I'm going to give you a perfect example. This is a great headline coming up here from the New York Times that will show you. It can't just be that people want to be left alone. No, it's something much darker. And of course, the College Fix has a great article on BSU and their funding of the conversation and support of it. They ask them about it. No response, no justification. The call here is for BSU to stop funding biased media and focus on educating the next generation. But look at how things get twisted. This is that projection thing. From the New York Times, here's an opinion piece by David Brooks, The Rise of Right-Wing Nihilism. Now, nihilism, of course, being the belief that nothing is sacred, nothing is true, there's nothing good, it's all dust in the wind, if I could borrow a phrase from Kansas. But that leaves a lot of very open interpretation to matters that, matter a lot to leftists. And this is a couple of quotes from a blogger who goes by El Gato Malo. Those of you who speak Spanish will understand. Oh, okay. What does this cat have to say? Well, here's what this cat has to say. Here's some useful context on the current zeitgeist. being sick to death of the incessant politicization of everything and the struggle session brown shirtery of a wokester Marxist cultural incursion and seeking to leave it behind to reclaim a pleasant life. Without it, that's not nihilism. It's hope for a better way and a better day. And so this is not, any calls you see to draw the line on transgenders in sports or transgender surgeries or, wide open borders and that kind of thing. This is not about we're reinventing the wheel. We're going in a totally unpredictable direction. No, this is about coming back to the things that promote safety and peace and, more importantly, freedom for everybody. But there's more to this. El Gato Malo says the disassembly of tyranny isn't destructive. It's the laying of a foundation for a return to flourishing. And we're done asking if you care. I love this next line. One does not negotiate with cancer. So here's a final thought on this. Our ask is simple, and this is on behalf of just normal people. You don't have to be a Republican. You don't have to be a conservative, libertarian. Normal people, all we want is for you to take those hyper-intrusive regimes of politics and go away. Leave our lives and stop trying to dominate them. Go be you. Just do it with some reasonable modicum of decorum and respect and leave others to do the same. But you experience that request to leave others alone as literally worse than murder and some form of erasure. And the reason for this is because the true believers, the diehard ideologues on the left, they're not idea people. People who are centered around freedom or who are centered around prosperity, they have ideas and they have the ability to change their minds on ideas. But for the diehard, struggle session leaders on the left, to change their mind would in their minds equate to changing their identity, erasing their identity. They don't have ideas. They just have identity. So if you're a person who finds comfort in the fact that, yes, someone is standing up and someone is fighting that battle at the state level, and apparently it's taking place pretty much at the national level too, just understand that even though Idaho may have a reputation of being a very good conservative red state, we still have forces that have been working against us for a very long time, and they specialize and they are very good at inverting reality. Sometimes we need a little help to be able to see through that. Well, that's what we're here for. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased. The Idaho Press Club are biased. All media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing